we're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's January 30th here in Seoul. I'm Shin, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Good morning, and Brooke Prince.
Hello, how are you?
Happy Tuesday. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. South Korea's top-tier esports competition, League of Legends Champions Korea, also known as LCK, has been receiving a lot of publicity and grappling with financial challenges ever since China has decided to stop live streaming related content. Tencent's Huya live streaming platform said it would end Chinese broadcasts of the new season. While the company didn't specify why, some industry insiders believe it has to do with the recent controversy around Teen Generation Gaming, also known as Gen G, referring to Taiwan as a separate country in a Facebook post. And our generation is known to prioritize healthy pleasure, which is seeking pleasure while trying to stay healthy. This has led to a surge in demand for tea, which many young adults in Korea believe to be a better alternative than coffee due to its health benefits. According to Starbucks Korea, the number of millennial and Gen Z customers looking for tea-related items at cafes has increased. The latest classic milk tea at Starbucks sold more than 1 million cups within 2 weeks of its release. Gongcha Korea, specializing in tea, has launched over 2,000 stores worldwide. And the global tea market, according to Statista, reached $247 billion last year, which was a 23% increase compared to 2019. An American influencer's YouTube video shedding light on depression issues in South Korean society has gone viral. The influencer, named Mark Manson, said behind Seoul's eye-opening economic and cultural boom is a deep-seated problem of depression. He called South Korea the most depressed country in the world, with the worst aspects of Confucianism, which is shame and judgment, being commonplace. Manson also said, based on Confucian culture, Koreans seem to sacrifice themselves for their family or the community. He also said Korean society emphasizes the worst aspects of capitalism, which is materialism and obsession over money. Now, due to such factors, Manson said Koreans seem to be hesitant and ashamed to talk about mental health issues, which is why the country seems to have one of the lowest depression diagnosis rates in the world. But at the same time, Korea is notoriously known for having the highest suicide rate among all OECD member countries. Now, here in the studio, what did you guys think about Manson's comments and the viral video? And do you agree that Korea has a deep-rooted depression problem?
I do think it is a problem here in Korea, and one example that I think illustrates the issue is whenever I go up to a Korean person and I tell them, for example, I have a headache, they'll say, well, have you gone to the hospital yet? That's their first response. It's a very natural, immediate thing to say. And that's because it's a physical ailment. So even for small physical things, they will rush to get checked out. But when it comes to mental health, I never hear it spoken about. In almost 8 years of being in Korea, I've never heard an open, honest conversation about mental health. So I do think there is still a stigma around it. And I think that also it's a collectivist culture.
Right.
So no one wants to be the squeaky wheel. Everyone is worried about burdening other people. And so they just don't share their problems.
Right.
And that's why we end up seeing these frightening headlines about depression and suicide rates. So I do hope that this is something that Korea can make some progress on. I hope that they can encourage people to open up and admit when they're having a hard time and to seek help.
Exactly. As you mentioned, here in Korea, while we go to the hospital for a common flu, it doesn't seem to be that case when it comes to depression or mental related issues, because we have this collectivist mindset of not wanting to be a burden to other people, especially when it comes to personal problems. But that is definitely taking a toll on our country's mental health status, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to agree with what Manson said before when it comes to people sacrificing themselves for their family and also obviously their work as well. I've been a person who sacrificed myself and been into a low depression myself. And you should treat depression exactly like you would treat any other illness and go and see professional help. And like Aristotle once said, it's during our darkest moments that we must focus to see the light. So go and seek help if you need to.
Exactly. And I think a lot of officials here in Korea, including from those from the health ministry, are trying to really facilitate open discussions on this matter. That's why we're seeing counseling programs being expanded from elementary school students all the way to adults. So hopefully we'll see more development there. Let's now switch gears to our main discussion topic of the day. South Korea has traditionally been considered an ethnically homogenous country. But recently, with the surge in foreign workers, international students, and marriage immigrants, we're slowly yet steadily getting ready to become a multicultural society. My AI voice secretary with more.
4.89%. That's how much of the population in Korea are foreigners. The Justice Ministry released some stats last December that showed how over 2.5 million foreigners are living in Korea. Officials welcomed the surge in the foreign population, stressing the importance of immigration policies, mainly because offering Korea as a new immigration hub could tackle the country's dwindling birth rate and projected decline in population.
South Korea is quickly transitioning into a multicultural society, and here in the studio, we're going to find out how exactly. Walter, how exactly are we transitioning into becoming a melting pot?
Well, some of the main reasons why South Korea is becoming a multicultural society is really down to the globalization of our culture. Now, people are traveling more, obviously, after the pandemic and working overseas more as well. Now, for South Korea, especially, the influence is no surprise. It comes from K-contents, like your music, movies, and dramas, which have a massive boost for the country to get in visitors or people who are just wanting to move here in general. Not just that, it is also a place that welcomes many international students, and as life goes, sometimes you just get stuck in the one place and you continue to live here, and then it becomes, you know, a romantic relationship with somebody, and therefore we have these multicultural families. And one more reason I would like to mention is job opportunities as well. Now, not just English teaching jobs, but also corporate labor jobs. They all have different reasons for hiring their employees, but yeah, there are many opportunities to work here in Korea.
Right, whether it be for romantic reasons or for job opportunities, we are seeing almost 5% of the population being formed of foreigners. Now, Brooke, would you like to add on to how South Korea is transitioning into becoming a multicultural society?
Yes, definitely. So Korea is approaching the tipping point of officially becoming a multicultural society, which is where 5% or more of the population is from multicultural backgrounds. From my research, I believe we're around 4.89% at this point, so very close to that 5% threshold. And I believe that we will hit it very soon because there is an influx of foreigners coming in. Like Walter mentioned, there are many factors contributing to that. We, of course, have the Korean wave and work opportunities. But one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is that Korea is currently dealing with a low birth rate problem combined with an aging population. So what that means is that the Korean population is staying stagnant while the population of foreigners is increasing. So inevitably, we are naturally going to see some shifting of the population dynamics. And of course, as a foreigner living in Korea myself, I think it's a great thing. I really am happy to see more foreigners coming here because I would recommend it to anyone I know.
It's not only just you. I think the Justice Ministry was well aware that foreigners are playing an important part to South Korea's demographic crisis, which is why officials are trying to strengthen immigration policies out there. And in the meantime, you two are making up that 4.89% of the international population. So what made you choose to come to Korea?
So for me, it's a little cringy, but it was more of a spiritual journey because I was born in South Korea, but I was raised in Australia, and I didn't really live amongst any other Asian groups, or basically it was all Caucasians. So once I reached my 20s, I actually met a lot of Koreans who took me under their wing, and they taught me a lot about the Korean culture, the language, etc., which spurred me to actually move to Korea. And now that has been my original plan was 1 year. Now in a couple of days it will be 11 years.
Wow.
So a lot of things have changed, including now I've started a family. So it looks like I'll be here to stay.
You have a family here in Korea,
Yes.
so you came for a spiritual journey but ended up living a new life.
Exactly.
So sweet.
Starting a new chapter. What about you, Brooke?
Well, my journey to Korea began with a job advertisement online. It was for teaching English overseas. And at the time, I wasn't really happy with my job situation, my living situation. I just felt kind of restless. And so when I saw this, it just called to me for some reason. I was young, I was in my early 20s, and I thought, oh, this will be a fun adventure. And then when I researched it, I found that there are many wonderful benefits to teaching English in Korea. And not only that, but Koreans really prioritize education, which means that they respect their teachers a lot. So I figured that it would be a very worthwhile way to spend, like Walter said, just a year. I said it'll just be a year. That was the plan. That's what I told my family. And now, coming up in August, it will be 8 years for me since I've been in Korea.
So both of you, it's almost
time
been
flies.
a decade.
Yep.
Exactly, time flies. And since you guys moved, do you guys think that the perception towards foreigners have changed, especially since our generation is leading a new societal trend?
Okay, for me it's a little hard to say because if I don't speak, I blend in with the crowd sort of thing. So it's hard for me to get those experiences from maybe how certain people treat foreigners. But going off of what acquaintances have told me, Koreans do sadly look down on certain countries and ethnicities. I won't name any of them, but I think that Caucasian people from wherever, they get treated a little bit better. Not always, there are always exceptions. But yes, that's something I think that we need to change quickly.
Definitely. We were once a homogenous society, and I do think a lot of elderly or people from the older generation were very US-centric. So we had a perception that Caucasians might be the superior race. There were traditional thoughts like that, but nowadays we're seeing more multi-ethnicities here in Korea, and it does seem to be, our country seems to be opening up to the concept of accepting more foreigners, but are we there yet in your opinion?
I would say in my personal experience, I felt welcomed the moment I got here. The day I landed, I remember one of my coworkers, he took me to a grocery store and he introduced me to all the best Korean snacks.
Nice, yeah.
And then he took me aside and he said, look, I know this must be really hard for you because you're living in another country, your family is far away, but I want you to know you have a support system, you can lean on us, and we will be your family until you go back home. And it was so touching to me and so heartwarming. And I've had a lot of experiences like that over the years, just these gestures of kindness to someone from a different background. But of course, I have had some negative experiences. Right. I've had taxi drivers try to rip me off because they assume I won't know enough to know that they're overcharging me. I've had some of them just drive right past me when they see that I'm a foreigner. So I've had some experiences like that, but I do think overall I've been extremely lucky. I've been treated extremely well. And I do think, to Walter's point, I have privilege in that. Not a lot of people have had the same exact experience. Right. There are a lot of people that have experienced discrimination here, and I find that very heartbreaking. I really hope that Korea can make some movement on this front and become more tolerant and open so that every foreigner can just enjoy Korea and feel accepted.
And it's not to say that Korea only has a discrimination and racist problem. It's actually everywhere. Racism is prevalent and common in other parts of the world as well. But now that we're seeing globalization and everyone moving about, trying to live a different life in new countries, I do think that there needs to be more efforts, especially here in Korea that was once traditionally homogenous, now turning into a multicultural society. There seems to be a lot more efforts that South Korea needs to take into account. So what do you think needs to be done for our society to be welcoming foreigners or even mixed children?
Well, I'll compare to what I grew up with in Australia. So I'd say that Australia would be one of the most multicultural countries in the world, despite, being thousands of kilometers from every other country. We have a lot of Europeans, a lot of Asians, a lot of Americans, East Asians, etc. coming to Australia, and now we are getting used to the mixed culture or the multicultural experience there in Australia. And that's also because of pretty good working conditions as well as student programs. Listen, it isn't perfect. Obviously, there are still the certain groups, the minorities out there that are racist, but in the last couple of decades, I think we've been more of a welcoming country to every different nation. And the racists are heavily outnumbered, and the sane ones usually keep their mouth shut, which is good. So when it comes to, example, mixed children, that's also a topic as well. It's very common these days, unlike here in Korea, where it's still relatively a new thing.
Right.
But no one in Australia usually discriminates against mixed children, which I think is a great thing as well.
So it has to do with the quantity of people we're seeing there.
Yes.
We're seeing so many foreigners there, which is why the country is naturally transitioning into becoming more welcoming. What about in the States? I mean, it's the epitome of being a melting pot.
We are known for being the melting pot of the world in the US, and I think that's a beautiful aspect of the country where there's so much diversity, there are so many cultures that are blended together. But of course, we still deal with a lot of discrimination and racism in the States. There's a lot of progress that needs to be made on that front. But if I had to compare the two in terms of openness to foreigners, one example that I'd give is when I first came to Korea and barely spoke Korean, I would try out my little basic phrases, hello and thank you, and I would get such a warm response. It would be, oh my gosh, your Korean is so good, and they just shower you with compliments and reassurance, and I think it's because they genuinely really appreciate any effort that people put into learning such a difficult language and learning about the culture. And so I will give Korea points on that front. I think Korea does a very good job of not putting pressure on on foreigners to rapidly assimilate. Whereas I think in the US, there can almost be this expectation sometimes that you're fluent in English just because you're in the country, which is, of course, absurd. So I think Korea does do well on that front. But of course, like we've been talking about, there are improvements that can be made.
Exactly. And if I may add on, I think South Korea is also doing a good job, in particular our generation, and the fact that we're trying to welcome foreigners by also speaking the universal language of English. Like, even though we see foreigners on the street, we don't just try to speak Korean. We try to ask them questions or follow-up questions in English, which I think does help people feel more
Agreed.
accustomed to society. And another country that's doing a good job of welcoming multi-ethnicities and cultures is the Philippines. That's why we're going to include a Gen Z that's been living there to hear what the pros and cons of a multicultural society are. We're now going to include a fellow Gen Z in our talks. It's Jade Zina Humawas from the Philippines. The Philippines boasts diversity. It has over 100 dialects and many ethnic groups. So we're very glad to hear Jade talk about the Philippines and how multicultural of a society it is. Welcome, Jade.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
All right, Jade. Welcome
It's nice
back.
to be back.
All right, we're going to be
Yes.
talking about how the Philippines is a multicultural society. So could you start us off by mentioning some pros and then a few cons?
Yeah, sure. So multicultural society promotes understanding and tolerance by exposing individuals to diverse ideas and customs. It provides opportunities for people to familiarize themselves with the customs, traditions, and beliefs of other cultures, which enhances knowledge and empathy for those with different backgrounds. Moreover, such societies contribute to economic growth through increased trade and tourism and fostering innovation. However, there are some challenges that could affect this multicultural society, which includes cultural conflict, language barriers, social fragmentation, there's discrimination and integration difficulties for some individuals. So the impact of multicultural varies based on context and policies in a specific place or a country.
Excellent. So some are hoping to see the growing international population in Korea tackle the low birth rate problems. Now, do you think this could be a direct solution?
I think merely increasing the international population in Korea may not serve as a direct solution for the low birth rate problem, not only in Korea, but also globally. So the low birth rate problems are influenced by various factors, and resolving this issue requires comprehensive policies addressing economic stability, family support, and achieving a harmonious work-life balance. So while multiculturalism can bring diversity and potentially contribute to population growth, it cannot be guaranteed as a complete solution to the complex challenge of low birth rates.
Well, thank you so much for your insight. I have one last thing I'm curious about. What are some limitations or hurdles that seem to be stopping Korea from better transitioning into a multicultural society? What do you think needs more work? And can you give us some policies from the Philippines that we could refer to?
Yeah, sure. So moving towards a multicultural society in Korea comes with its share of challenges, encompassing the historical and cultural homogeneity, language barriers, social integration, international support. There are employment opportunities and education. So drawing from insights here in the Philippines, my country, specifically here in Davao, there are a lot of ethnic groups with a diverse culture. I think Korea could enhance its transition by adopting measures like language integration and cultural exchange programs, fostering diversity in media and education, and establishing community support centers. So it is vital to tailor these policies to Korea's specific context and taking into account its distinct history, culture, and societal dynamics. So successful multicultural integration requires collaborative efforts involving the government, community organizations, and probably the private sectors.
I totally agree. Collaboration seems to be key here. Thank you so much, Jade. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. And apart from South Korea and the Philippines, we also asked our viewers from other parts of the world to tell us whether they're living in a multicultural society. If so, what they think are the pros and cons. Take a look at the screen to find out what 3 of our viewers had to share with us. Amola said, I'm from India, so there are definitely a lot of pros. The problem is that the diversity causes friction in terms of agreement over policies many a time, not to mention the religious divide problem we have had since forever. The plus point is, though, that you basically get a varied exposure to a rich cultural heritage, which shapes your perspective in indescribable ways. Bell says the U.S. has been considered the melting pot of the world for years. The positives are that people can easily experience culture other than their own. The negatives are when 2 cultures have opposite ideas due to their cultures clashing. Zen said, in the Caribbean, we are the result of 500 plus years of change of ownership and change of language, which gives the local diaspora a wealth of different cultural influences and societal norms. It's often a positive in living in the region, but it has taken much turmoil even today to get here. So we can see that multiculturalism is a prevailing topic in other parts of the world, but I do think that we still need a lot more effort in order for us to be more welcoming and getting over the problem of integration or trying to facilitate better adjustment. And as millennials and Gen Z that are leading this type of trend, what do you think we can do to better prepare to enter a multicultural society?
I think obviously it's very simple, is that we accept all cultures and all religions. I do agree with our guest before that I don't think having internationals come in to boost the birth rate is the way to go, but that doesn't mean that we should be rejecting them in any way possible. So I think we should just all be happy and healthy and love each other, and that should just be the rule of the day.
It should be, not just here in Korea, but in all parts of the world. What about you, bro?
Yeah, that's right. My shirt today says love.
Love.
So I hope that everyone loves each other. My best advice would be to keep yourself open to experiences. I've been in Korea for 25% of my life, and I think it has totally enriched my life and made me a better person. So I would recommend getting out there, make connections with people from other backgrounds. Don't let language barriers be a barrier to you learning more about the world and the diverse people in it. That's my best advice.
Take a leap of courage. And as you mentioned, and also Jade mentioned and Walter mentioned, I think it's a collaborative effort that we need to see, not only from individuals that are living here in Korea, but also for foreigners who are coming in. Everyone needs to be working together in order for us to better transition into a multicultural society. Now, in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
And Birthrate.
Thank you. It was so fun.
All right. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.